As a disclaimer, if you are someone who comes across this video in say 2021 or 2022 under the assumption that Blade and Soul is still running at that point in time, as a general rule of thumb, I would say try to make sure you have the second best in slot PvP weapon, accessories, and soul shield. In regard to your other accessories, this is all really going to depend on the climate of the game and what those accessories are providing you at different various stages. Hopefully this guide will help you out some. Good luck, take care. Disclaimer number 2, if you're someone who is wanting to get into 1600 plus LO games, just keep in mind this is when the pay to win spike increases exponentially. However, if you stay away from this particular tier, you can have some enjoyment in 6v6, assuming that you're a low spender or a free to play player. Not everyone that you run into in 6v6 at the sub 1600 rating is going to be geared out the ass. This is just the reality of it. I still get queued up with and against people, for example, that use a Dragon Forge weapon, which is a very old weapon, and a lot of their accessories are just very old. You run into a mixed bag of players that are geared and not very geared at the sub 1600 rating. Also, keep in mind a lot of people at the sub 1600 rating aren't going to be that skilled either, so you could also outplay some people on a skill level. In order to obtain all PvP and accessories in this game, you will be doing a combination of PvE and PvP content. Since we recently got new PvP gloves and PvP bracelet that completed this set that I am focusing on in this video, I will briefly explain where to get each of these PvP base accessories while this ring is being upgraded in the background. For the PvP earring, you're going to get that from the Shadowmoor dungeon. PvP earring is going to come from Dreamsong Theater. The PvP belt will come from Warp Citadel. The PvP gloves and PvP bracelet will come from a 6v6 vendor. Each of these will cost 25,000 battle points and 100 moonstones. And then finally, the PvP necklace is going to come from Mao out of Den of the Ancients for 25 of the tokens. Typically, when players do get their hands on these accessories for this particular tier, they will upgrade through the PvE path and then they will convert over to the PvP path at stage 10 or higher. This saves a lot on bloodstones, and this is actually a very good strat to use, especially if you are an individual that is going to be using the PvP bracelet that has just recently came out. Now, this method is not going to be as viable looking at the next tier PvP accessories that come out because both paths unfortunately use PvE scales. I don't agree with this decision that NCSoft has done, but unfortunately NCSoft is only consistent at being inconsistent. For a few of these accessories, under the worst case scenario that you don't end up dropping them and you have to use cores in order to purchase these accessories, my personal recommendation would be to buy the Warp Citadel belt first. The two reasons why I say that is because you as an individual may want to use the PvE belt also, and beyond that, Warp Citadel is going to not be as accessible of a dungeon as the Shadowmoor or Dreamsong Theater due to a lower number of players who could do that dungeon ideally. At this point, let's assume that you have all of your PvP accessories that you want to get your hands on and you're ready to start the process of upgrading. Which one should be high upgrade priority? Which one should be low upgrade priority? For me personally, the bracelet was my #1 upgrade priority. Prior to this new bracelet coming out, I was still using PvE bracelets for 6v6 that were giving me little to no mileage in my performance, at least for the characters that I primarily used. My next upgrade priority would actually be the PvP ring. The reason why I wanted to upgrade this as a next tier priority is because it's a very easy upgrade to knock out, especially if you take it up through the PvE path. The PvE path for this ring uses silver scales, which is a dirt cheap currency in the game's current progressional state. My next upgrade priority would be the Mao necklace for PvP. This is a very good item to upgrade in my opinion, because with you having a higher stage of this, you're going to get additional PvP attack power and a few other additional stats. This is just basically going to increase your chances of being able to kill your target. In regards to the PvP earring, if you do have this, keep in mind that you should get this maxed out. Same thing if you are using the PvE earring. If you're using the PvE earring in general, you should max that out anyways because you're going to be using it in PvE also. Low upgrade priorities for me personally are going to be the belt and the gloves. Now, some people may feel like there's a lot of mileage to be obtained from these, but I personally look at the belt and the gloves as meh upgrades. They might be nice to have maxed out, but I don't feel like me pouring resources into them is going to be worth it in comparison to other items such as the ring, the necklace, the bracelet, and the earring. This is of course my opinion on it. Some people may tell you otherwise. Even though I am fanboying over this new PvP bracelet that has come out, I do want to make it very clear clear that for certain class specs, they will still be able to make the PvE bracelet for their respective class viable, or they will be able to still use the subjugator bracelet, which is the old PvP bracelet. I know off the top of my head, I could see fire KFMs, for example, still using the subjugator bracelet for getting that extra offensive damage off of their comet strikes, and switching over to the new PvP bracelet if they choose to run Dragonfire for that higher damage reduction when they're running that skill with that bracelet. The next question that I will address is PvP earring versus PvE earring. Why are there some players that use the PvP earring? Why are there some players that use the PvE earring? The PvP earring's mileage is actually going to be on a class by class basis. Ideally, in order to get the full utility from this earring, a target needs to be CC'd as often as possible. Therefore, classes like the Assassin, for example, could get good mileage from using this earring because they do have a good number of CCs to work with. The reason why there are players that use the PvE earring is for a few reasons. For starters, Mystic is a much more consistent stat than debuff damage when it comes to 6v6. The reality is that you will not always be attacking a target that is CC. Another reason why this earring is used is due to the fact that it can apply a debuff to the target that will increase the chances of landing a critical by 10%. During this debuff, if that is successful, the critical will actually hit for a lot more damage. This is very nice to have in a 6v6 environment. Also, whenever it comes to any PvP accessories, if you're not 100% sure where to get these said accessories, if you will highlight on either the unrefined version of that accessory or the stage 1, they'll normally give you information on where to obtain that said accessory from. For PvP weapon, I do recommend the Incinerator 3 weapon at bare minimum. The reason why I'm not recommending the Dragon Fang weapon here is because it is more or less just a 2.0 version of the Incinerator weapon. You can get good performance with an Incinerator weapon at the rating that I'm recommending. Obviously, as new gear tiers come out, you always want to try to make sure you have the second best in slot PvP weapon. In regards to the gems, you have two in-game paths that you can go with. You can go with Dyad Rubies or you can go with Dyad Emeralds. Dyad Emeralds are really nice because they will increase your piercing, and also they will increase your chances of landing auto crits on your targets, which is very vital in 6v6 since it is very common that players will run around with 40% crit defense, if not higher. In regards to the Dyad Emeralds, on the other hand, these will increase your chances of having a procced heightened crit defense, and they will also increase your base HP, basically increasing your survivability. I do want to point out, however, that despite these Dyad gems being extremely good to use for 6v6, unless you are an individual that gets very lucky with RNG boxes, trove, etc., or you are someone who spends a lot of money on the game, the likelihood of you obtaining a full set of these is extremely slim. Next up, I'm going to give recommendations for the remaining accessories that we have in this game. For Soul, the bare minimum I would say would be True Cosmic. It's going to have 8 seconds of uptime on it, which is going to give you 3 seconds more uptime to work with in comparison to Soul stages prior to it. However, I would say as a general recommendation to try to aim for True Tiger Soul. Not only does it provide 100 more attack power than the True Cosmic Soul, but you're also going to get 2 seconds more uptime, which is going to even give you more time for setups for your kills. The Heart, bare minimum, I would say True Virtuous. However, with that being said, my personal recommendation would be Awakened Champion 1. The reason why I recommend Awakened Champion 1 is because at that point, the Heart gets its full proc at 5 stacks instead at 10 or 15 stacks that's present with prior Heart stages. Pet Aura, I would recommend having this at Alpha Stage 5 at this point in time. While you're not going to get the increased shield value that you're going to get from the Unleashed version of the Alpha, you're at least going to get that 50k HP, which is going to be really nice. The Talisman, I personally can't give you any recommendations on because while yes, this can be very good to use at 6v6, once you get it into the Thunder tier, the problem that I have with this accessory is, for me, it's a giant mat dump before you get it to a point to where it's even good. That's why I don't have mine upgraded hardly at all. So I can't give you a recommendation on something that I don't even personally bother to upgrade because I look at it as a giant mat dump item. When they make this more affordable to upgrade in the future, you definitely should try to aim into getting into the Thunder tier at that point, again, when they make it affordable. For your Soul Shield, I would personally recommend the Avenging Soul Shield 8-piece set. The reason why I recommend this is because the Dragon Fangs Soul Shield set that's going to be above it is basically like a 2.0 version, and while it is slightly better, I don't feel like the improvement is so significant to where you have to have the Soul Shield set. Avenging Soul Shield set works perfectly fine for this rating rating that I'm recommending. Your soul badge is either going to be a PvP soul badge or it's going to be a PvE soul badge. Of course, this will vary on class to class basis. Ask around, kind of look at other people's profiles, see what they're using in PvP, and you can kind of figure out what way you need to go from there. Worst case scenario, always feel free to ask somebody, because how will you ever know otherwise if you don't ask? Finally, as far as your badge goes, everybody should be getting the VT badge at this point. It's super accessible, but you do want to work toward the ET badge as a recommendation at some point in the future once this badge becomes more accessible and more affordable. Lastly, I will very briefly talk about Unity. I have my Sins Unity page up just so you can have some kind of a ballpark idea of what your stone should look like and things along those lines. Basically, no boss AP, no defense, no recovery, no additional damage. This is how your stone should look like. And quite frankly, depending on the class that you play, you may not even need critical stones. For example, Earth and Shadow Destroyers have their own skill buff called Fury that can increase their crit rate up by 100%. So even in that kind of a example, critical stones may not be needed. Out of all of these stones, I would say ideally accuracy to a certain extent is going to be the most important and valuable stat for 6v6. If you're in a scenario to where your attacks are being evaded or blocked by your opponent on a very common basis, then that means that your accuracy is too low. My recommendation would be to try to get more accuracy Unity stones and slowly increase your accuracy by 1 to 2% until this stops being a common occurrence. After that, the second most valuable stat in my opinion would be piercing. The more piercing you have, the less likely that somebody's defense is going to be able to reduce the damage that you're dealing to them. After that, I would say HP, because having more HP, while it's not going to matter versus certain opponents, it will give you a lot more survivability versus foes that are significantly weaker and can't hit you nearly as hard. And then critical is going to be the least valuable stat out of these four in my opinion, because the mileage is going to be on a class by class basis. I'd already given an example with Shadow and Earth Destroyer earlier, but as another example, critical stones are actually very useful for my KFM and my Sin, since they do have a crit rate buff of Fighting Spirit that increases their critical by 40%. A few ways that you can obtain these legendary stones is to get these on low chance out of various RNG type boxes that we have on promotion throughout the course of the year. Another method to obtain these legendary stones is to get these out of a 3-star crit and trove. The skill ascension stones are going to be 5k gold each, and then the regular stat stones radiant are going to be 2.5k gold. Now as time goes by, these prices may decrease or they may not. It all just depends. Another way to obtain these stones is to get these out of F10. Now there's two different ways to obtain them out of F10. There is an F10 daily special to where the skill stones are going to be 3k Hong Moon coin, and then the regular stat radiant stones are going to be 2k Hong Moon coin. Another method is to buy these in temporary bundles. So I had recently purchased a skill stone and a radiant stone for 3,500 Hong Moon coin. So these are really good bang for your buck in comparison to the F10 special, but these may not pop up as often. Hopefully there is something in this video that helps you out and provides you a little bit of a guidance for what you need to obtain for 6v6. Be safe out there with all this coronavirus stuff going on, and take care. Happy gaming. Deuces!